Hello, everyone. I'm very happy to be hosting this panel. I'm Alexandra Jarry-Bourne from Adform, VP Global Client Partnerships. And I have with me 4 amazing speakers. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Clare Ritchie, SVP of Global Programmatic and Inhousing from Nikon Media Group.
Hello, I'm Oliver. I'm Deputy CEO of the company RTL AdAlliance, and I'm Chief Digital Officer and overseeing also all digital activities.
Hi, I'm Stefan Sommer. I'm SVP Global Sales and Partnerships at Adform.
Hi, I'm Jamie Barnard, the CEO of a tech company called Compliant. We provide media quality signals to the digital ad industry.
So today we're going to talk about navigating adtech's new rules, and especially what we call advertising sovereignty. In the landscape, we usually talk about data or technology sovereignty. We don't talk very often about advertising, which I think is a much larger word. It's not just about where your data flows or where your infrastructures are located to comply with local rules. It's about who you partner with, how do you work with your partners, and your advertising strategy. So one number I would like to share first, and I know that most of you might know it, 79% of digital ad spend is being transacted through US tech giants. It doesn't mean that everything is going to their own media, but we know how they tend to act. They tend to favor their own media, of course. And it's actually reinforced by a recent report by June's Media that says that 100% of the digital growth, ad spend growth, is actually captured by walled garden. So today in our panel, we're going to talk about what does that mean for open web, for European publishers, global agencies, global brands, European advertisers, and ad tech partners. So my first question to you guys is, how would you define advertising sovereignty? Is it to you just about the data, where the data are flowing, how the infrastructure is being set, or is it about creating true value in the digital media landscape? Oliver, would you like to start?
Yeah, happy to do so. First and foremost, thanks for bringing this topic up, and especially also the term, I think, or the label advertising sovereignty. I haven't heard so much, and I think it's really good that we play that. Secondly, the numbers you just demonstrated, I mean, they are facts, so they speak their language. Especially in Europe, broadcasters and premium publishers really need to stay in control of their data. And they want to have a transparency in the decision-making between advertisers and agencies, where the money goes. Because at the end of the day, what is really, really important, also in the comparison to the US sometimes, we are not just putting impressions somewhere. I mean, we are here at our beach, right? We are presenting European media as strong as we can. We are selling European content where millions of investments go into. And we are not just putting an impression somewhere and somewhere else is doing something in an intransparent way with that. So that is something I think is more than justified with the investments into the contents behind. And of course, that means in Europe, we sometimes do things differently. But I think it's our job. It's our job to raise the flag and say, this, whatever comes from the US or globally, we cannot adapt. We cannot take. So I think it's really important to talk about that topic and also to understand why European broadcasters sometimes tend not to give so much data, but for good reasons. I think it's really their crown jewels, right? It's also their assets, the strong content and the data assets behind. And we need to be careful what we do with it. So it's really great because it's at the core what we do. We are representing our partners, broadcasters and premium publishers, not just an SSP, for instance. That is something else.
Yeah, definitely. Anyone wants to add? Claire, yeah?
I think we've always known that you have to have an element of accountability with the huge kind of investments that we look after in all different ways. And I think that this brings the idea together that it's more than just control, choice, transparency, but it's ultimately how we can ensure that not only is there a kind of a fair playing field, but actually that people can add value in the way that means something to them, and that the kind of the yield and opportunity being taken out of any given situation is for the person who deserves it and is putting the investment in, rather than necessarily going straight back to an unknown box in the corner. So yes.
Stefan?
Yeah, maybe to add to that, I think you're absolutely right, all what you said, and also what you said, Claire. I think it's really important, that brands, also publishers, take control of the data and really have it in their own hand to decide how it's been monetized at the end, right? And their brands are relying more on global tech companies, and some are less, and some really see the advantage. So you can reach a consumer on YouTube, of course, but you can also reach this consumer on the open web, which is facilitated to maybe European tech, right, in Europe. And I think that is really important. On the other hand, it is about marketing outcomes, right? And speaking to you, Claire, right, your clients demanding marketing outcomes, and of course you have to invest into Meta, and of course you have to invest into Google, but the question is how much you invest, and you're fully relying on them, or you have a bit of a different approach to that. And I think one thing is even more important when you think about the rise of AI right now. At the end, these big tech companies, they are building up huge AI models, and these AI models need data to be trained with, right? So the question is, as a brand, as a publisher, do you really want to put your data into these models? I think that's an interesting question.
Very. Jamie, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, just let me keep it simple. Before this panel, I went on to ChatGPT and said, name tech companies in the ad industry that are not US based. Baidu, Tencent, Alibaba, and then Rakuten and Criteo. So the reason, I don't believe in advertising sovereignty, honestly. I've spent 15 years in Unilever, 3 years on the other side. I have never seen anyone make choices based on geography. But what I am seeing now, especially with AI, is tech in Europe is actually starting to happen. And now we have choices. And that's when sovereignty comes in, because now brands, agencies can buy European tech. And that's a big shift.
Yes.
I would like to add one thing here. I think sometimes we can learn from the US that we do our marketing job even better. I think there is European tech. I think we are sitting here, Stefan, demand side, supply side, or publisher side, really successful European tech companies. I think we should be louder, and because we are really sticking to the rules, we are really taking compliance, data control and compliance very, very, very seriously. So this is something I think we should be louder and explain maybe even more. The alternatives are there. They are here.
Yes. And Claire, next question to you. As a global agency looking after global clients, including some headquartered in Europe, are you facing any challenges using US tech companies sometimes?
I think the inherent challenges of using a tech company that's based in any single location is if they have built for their own environment. And this doesn't just kind of sit within the tech companies. It's the platforms, it's the products, it's how people create internally, and that extends to our clients as well. Everybody is affected by the same. If you look at something within a defined set of parameters and you don't look at something that is a framework fit for the whole, you can't translate that. It's almost impossible. And I think we are seeing more and more examples of that, where there is a huge escalation in opportunity in one specific area, and then it kind of fritters out as it gets to anywhere else, certainly outside the US. And we are slightly beholden to them in the fact that there is huge technical resource and huge advancement happening there. And obviously everyone wants to take advantage of that in some way, shape or form. And from a walled garden standpoint, they are offering things that you cannot get elsewhere. That's the point. That said, I do think that there are more and more opportunities to be interoperable with these businesses. And we have, even from the kind of basic API connections in terms of data sharing and building things into your own environment, et cetera, you don't just have to use the off-the-shelf product. The off-the-shelf product is the baseline for which you create your foundation. But I don't think this is just an EMEA problem. I think this is a truly global problem with kind of regional and local application. And I think one that actually, with kind of gaining momentum and interestingly the rise of AI, and as we kind of edge towards agentic solutions, we do start to see a little bit more parity in terms of how quickly things can be turned around and changed, and we can take into account the nuances between GDPR, CCP, et cetera, we're not quite as beholden to such a long lead time anymore as maybe we were very, very recently. So whereas we do have the kind of the US focus, and we are kind of there's the walled gardens, actually I think there is opportunity beyond that. And from a Omnicom specific point of view, we have something called CASA, which we launched a few years ago, which ultimately looks at transparency and standards in advertising. Because we know that to truly use any of our platforms or work with any of those tech companies, there has to be an element of understanding what it is they're offering, not just using what's being given to you. The rise of kind of custom algorithms within platforms and custom bidders has only been an issue because if a platform offers you something and says, let us do it, let us take control, and you say yes without truly understanding what's going on, what data they're using, what inputs they're using, the yield that's coming out of the back of it, then you're kind of almost adding fuel to the fire. And I think if you can truly understand it and use things appropriately, build your own around an infrastructure, clients are seeing lots of success, but there is a real opportunity for market first, region first, that is not just the US, and probably the thing I say most when meeting with our partners up and down the beach. So.
I would like to add one thing here, if I may. Of course, we are all working in a way with US tech and US DSPs. What I'm concerned with, what strikes me is, we need a very transparent and fair ecosystem. And I experience things in daily practice, right? Inventories gets filtered. Why is that getting filtered? Who decides who's filtering that? That is, and we are selling, as I said, we are selling products for a good reason. So I think we cannot accept this, right? We need to ask why is that? You get an answer. First, it takes a couple of days, right? Since our industry, it's not so easy if the campaign is running. Why is that? And there are filtering mechanisms which are not entirely clear to me. And this is something where I think, for good reasons, then European publishers sometimes say, I'm not allowing XYZ US DSP on my addressable TV inventory, or only with limited data sets. At some point of time, you need to make a point and say, fair enough, but here's my restriction at this moment. Is it good for the advertisers? Probably not. But then you need to come a little bit on the European side and on the broadcaster side. We are doing a lot of investments into content. We need to control that in a way, or try, I must say. I think it's our job.
And actually, it's a good segue to the next question to you, Oliver. So global publishers are suffering from the walled gardens because the spend is going to their platform, so they're seeing less spend on their side. So how do you think there's a space for them to recreate value of their own inventory without going back to the arms of those tech giants?
I'm 100% convinced of that. On the one hand, I think you may be right. I think ChatGPT is not correct in that way. I think Smartly is a company really born in Europe, and I think Adform too. I'm wondering why that didn't show up in the results. Years ago, we may have not been as strong as where we are now. So we have a clear alternative. So what should I do if our tech would be by far not competitive enough to the US giants? That would be a real issue. But it's not. And there are broadcasters in Europe using that. And we haven't seen so much. The pipeline of discussions, we want to explore your tech, has never been so full, ever. Regardless of the US noise or global noise, or so many messages are around, honestly, I don't care. What we see is there's a clear appetite. Let's talk about this. Let's talk about what are you doing with analytics in the data in France. It's huge. What are you doing there on the broadcaster suite? How do you handle vegan ads, what we call consent ads, so many things we have a clue about. And addressable TVs in particular, because it's really, in this case, you could say protected. Protected in terms of we still control the data flow. And then you hear sometimes, if you give us the data, there will be much more money. Okay, so I get the point, but the inventory and the content, take the sports, take the entertainment from this morning, from Mozzi Mabuse, for instance, which was this morning, Let's Dance, is so valuable, so strong, that I'm not too sure if the advertiser doesn't see this not enough value, if a certain data point is not coming through. And who decides this? Again, I would like to discuss this with the advertiser direct or with the agency. We really believe in a fair and transparent way of working with advertisers and agencies. And it's people in the middle helps to facilitate, But I don't want to have hidden decisions somewhere. That is what is I call unhealthy.
And speaking about transparency, Jamie, you worked for Unilever for many years, 15 years, is that correct? As a lawyer, and you now set up your own company, a tech company measuring data integrity standards for publishers. So how are you advising global brands to navigate between media, data, adtech, privacy? What can you tell us about that?
I think sometimes the biggest tech challenges are actually fundamentally human problems. If you look at the complexity of the digital ad ecosystem, and then you look at what's happening inside brands from a talent perspective, I would be easier for me to name brands that are not going through massive root and branch transformation right now and stripping talent from the organizations. They're all getting smaller. And of course, that means they only have the option of outsourcing to the agency, outsourcing to tech vendors like us, because they just do not have the bandwidth to solve these tech challenges, especially in media. If you ask yourself, why is so much ad spend going to Google and Meta, right? It's like, I promised I would say this, like eating a donut. It's tasty, it's really quick, it does the job, and it's, they've done an amazing job, but it's not always good for you. If you look at these big tech companies, they are monopolistic. It's been proven in court. They are anti-competitive. There are relentless data breaches. They are black boxes. And there's a lot of sketchy stuff goes on inside those black boxes because people like Analytics call them out. Yet, we are still spending money with them. Actually, the open web advantage is a lot more data transparency, a lot more access to data, and if you can filter out and drive ad spend to quality media, which is exactly what we do at Compliant, then you are going to win on the open web. But it's going to be tough.
Thank you, Jamie. Do you want to add something, Oliver?
What he says, it's absolutely right. And I think there's even more. I mean, there are clear legal claims, clear proven cases of misuse. And I'm sometimes wondering why advertisers just are they reading this? Are they listening to this? I mean, there's serious proven claims on the table. And then what you said is, it's our job. I think if you compare YouTube in the US and YouTube in Europe, it's really different in terms of content. So, and that needs to be explained. And this is our job to explain this. Sorry, you cannot compare this. Is this really in Europe, for instance, sports is on the broadcaster side or on premium publishers, not so much on YouTube, just one example. We need to advocate louder for what we do in Europe. That is also clear. But I think this is really a bit frustrating that it is really not a hypothesis. We have empirical data and claims on the table, and sometimes it's just neglected. This is a bit. So I think also the advertisers need to, in my view, take a stand. And why are you continuing spending?
I do think we see more of that. Just very, very quickly. I think the tolerance levels for 100% of an advertising budget to kind of fritter off into a couple of big walled gardens are no longer there across the board. Yes, I'm sure there are still pockets of it happening around the industry, but I think as a education point, I think the entire industry is much more aware now of actually the benefits, regardless of who the end source is, of diversification, and ensuring that actually you are not creating kind of price disadvantage for yourself by investing only in one area. So I regardless of the avenue to get there, I do think that is more known and aware of now.
Can I just, sorry, Stefan, I'm jumping over you. I just want to bring some optimism back, right? Because whilst technology created the problem, technology is also going to solve this problem, right? It's becoming easier and easier and easier to find quality media on the open web. So there are lots of challenges with kind of low quality inventory, poor quality data, but the truth is technology is going to drive ad spend to publishers. And we need to create that technology to make it easy, because buying decisions will always come down to, is it faster, cheaper, more efficient?
Technology and maybe regulations, what do you think?
No. There's only one thing I agree with Elon Musk. Europe has regulated itself out of competition. unless we can find more principle-based regulation, it's going to be hard for emerging technology to compete with the US. Yes, regulation has a role to play. But if it's too prescriptive, it throttles innovation. And the Americans will build and deal with the problems later. We check whether we can do it with legal, and then you end up the race to the bottom.
I agree with what you said. However, I think regulation is really important when it comes to over-dominance in markets, right? I think that is for me a clear case where regulation should jump in. But I agree to you, it should not kill innovation, because innovation is what drives, as you said, the marketing spend also more into the open web. And I think that is where we all benefit from. We all love quality journalism. I think it's important in the world and has an absolute right to be there. And I think that is, what we're funding with ad dollars going into the open web, right?
And so, Stefan, there's threats coming from the US that they might revoke the privacy laws out there. Does that change anything for ad tech companies? And what about Adform?
I think Claire said it previously that some US tech companies building, first of all, for the US market, which is obvious, the biggest ad market, advertising market in the world. So it's obvious, right? I think we don't know what happened, right? We're living in a quite uncertain world right now where changes happen overnight. And I think at the end, it is probably for an American company that operates in Europe a bit more difficult than for being a European company operating in Europe, because Europe is a very fragmented kind of region where you have different kind of data security, data privacy players across the regions, across the markets, and it's a very complex beast from a US view, I would say. So I think we, as being founded in Europe, I think we know the European market very well, and we, of course, live up to the highest data privacy standards in Europe. And we have been doing this from day one because our biggest first clients were big telco, finance companies, banks, and so on. So we have the highest standards on data privacy and so on. So I think we will set it for that. And actually, we see this sometimes now with the uncertainty in the world, that we see a little bit that a few advertisers coming to us and say, okay, we need an alternative in case, right? So, and I think that is, and they understand then a bit more our value, how we are positioned in the market. And I think it's good. And that gives overall the European tech a little bit more traction in the global world.
Thanks. So as a last question, because I'd like to keep a few minutes for questions in the room, if there's any. There's growing talks in the industry that the open web has plateaued. What do you think? Do you agree? Do you think there's still a credible path against the walled gardens? You want to start?
I don't think it's plateaued. I think it is often at a severe disadvantage in terms of the complexities of creating opportunity there. But actually, once harnessed, they can be much greater than the opportunity of applying the same logic as everyone else. I think there is going to continue to be more opportunity in the open web, but I think it kind of goes back to my earlier point around diversification. I think it's absolutely acceptable to be using kind of inventory sources from some of the big tech companies in moderation and with understanding of exactly what they are doing for your, not only your media plan, but your overall kind of campaign strategy and business outcomes. And I think the better that we get at kind of continuing to surface that information, how it affects not only the channel that it's running in, the channels around it, we actually stand a much better chance of using everything at our disposal for the purpose that it's really, really good at, not just because it's there and easily available.
I think we haven't reached at all the plateau. I really think we are restarting, or we are just about to start. I mean, if you think it through, TV is getting digital at the end of the day, in many facets. And at the end, even the whole TV delivery will be ad served. So there's a big wave coming, and I think I see this across Europe. Streaming service is one thing. They are also growing. Of course, there are big US streaming services, that's clear. But still, it is a big push and investment behind across Europe into these services. At the same time, as I said, also TV is getting more and more advanced, and at the end of the day, digital. So I think there's really a bright future, what I really believe in Europe. And we have now the tech components around. I don't feel regulated, I must say. Really not.
Great.
There were, I mean, when GDPR came out, everybody said, oh God, now the GDPR, honestly, you do it, you take it seriously, you build it in, that's it. So I think it is, I don't feel constrained so much in Europe. So I think on the content side, on the TV side, on the tech side, we have things at hand. So now we need to evangelize more the fair and transparent ecosystem. I think that is really important. In transparency, hidden decisions, I'm not feeling good with it.
We'll be on that journey with you. Stefan?
Yeah, I can only echo what you both said. It's not plateauing. I think we also see rise of retail media. There's new formats coming in, new data, new companies coming up. If you're just looking at the crozet here, right? How many brands actually or companies starting up their media business now, right? There will be more media coming, more data coming into our industry, and I think it's good. It's because mainly traded openly and less like beyond hedged gardens or wallet gardens, which is great for our industry. So I think there's more to come.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's not the beginning of the end, it's the end of the beginning. I think publishers aren't just competing with the walled gardens, they are competing heavily with low-value, high-risk inventory. That's probably the biggest competitor for quality media. Now, you know, our company is devoted to driving ad dollars towards quality publishers, and I think that's the mission now. I think there's so much good journalism, and we have to fund that, and the only way to fund that is to stop funding waste. And that's happening. That technology is here right now, and I think, you know, I'm in good company. You know, in terms of RTL, I know from fact, they've invested years and years and years of effort getting the control and transparency across the vendors in their network, and that pays. Privacy is now a competitive advantage. It's no longer, I think we've got to move away from privacy as a regulatory conversation and move towards data being a competitive advantage. And because of the regulation, the ones who get it right will be the ones to beat.
Can I add something? But because I think you said something very important, quality media. So we had on Monday morning our news vertical. And news is, of course, for numerous reasons, a very hot topic at the moment. Yeah. But it's also in terms of reach across Europe, huge. Yeah. If you look at all the destinations in France, in Germany, NTV, and where else, and it's under-monetized. It's under-monetized. Of course, some verification vendors doesn't do their job properly. Here you have some things, some homework to do. But still, there's a lot of eyeballs, very interesting audiences, and so you can grow already there. And we need to raise the awareness how important that is, because there are really thousands of journalists doing the job every day, and it's a bit. But there's room. There's really room to grow.
Do we have time for questions in the room? Anyone wants to ask any questions to our panelists? No questions? Super clear. Perfect. Stefan, you...
Yeah, maybe one last word. I just want to thank Oliver and the whole RTL team for having us over here. I think it's really great to build a European base over here where we can be part of. We are very delighted to be part of that. And, yeah, of course, very happy to be on the panel with such a great Jamie, Claire. Thank you very much.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you for the kind words.
Thank you.